In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I helped a runner return to running after glute tendon repair surgery and how you can safely get back to running without constant flare-ups, using the same rehab and strength principles I've used as a physical therapist for nearly 10 years helping runners get back to running pain-free. So a big problem I know is that a lot of runners, they'll do traditional physical therapy after that glute tendon surgery, right? They'll be in PT for 3 months, 6 months, or longer, but they're still not ready for running. Or sometimes they're said, oh, go figure it out on your own. You're cleared to run. Maybe they get cleared. The surgeon says, hey, it's been long enough. You're cleared after surgery, but the pain spikes when they try to run. And oftentimes it's because they did an incomplete rehab, right? So people think it's just about time. Like if I just wait long enough, the body's just going to heal itself. The thing is, with the tendon, you still have to remodel it. So what happens is you go through the stages of healing, right? Inflammation, repair. Some people also call the repair phase the proliferation phase you see in the image here, and then to remodeling. What happens is they have an incomplete repair. So even though the surgeon repaired it, right, the tissues around it, as you can see in the model, the tendon, the muscle tendon unit is not fully strong enough to handle the demands of running. Sure, you might be able to do basic everyday life activities like go for a walk, climb stairs, but the minute you increase the load, the tissue starts flaring up again. And you get frustrated because, like, what the heck? You had the surgery, you did months of rehab, but it's an incomplete repair. You're partially better, but you're not fully strong enough to handle running, because running is actually a high impact sport. It's 2 to 3 times body weight every time your foot hits the ground. Contrast it with walking. Walking is just 1 times body weight. So maybe 1.5 times body weight if you're walking fast. Every time your foot hits the ground when you're walking, right? It's just body weight. But when you're running, it doubles or even triples the impact stress that's going through the joints, the tendons, the muscle. So if your body's not strong enough, you can keep having these pain flare-ups. And there's a big gap typically in traditional physical therapy in terms of pain rehab and return to performance. And return really to getting back to running fully. It's not just based on timeline, right? A lot of doctors or surgeons or even PTs will, rely on the stages of healing, but then don't properly progress the person through the proper exercises. You're often stuck, doing these basic exercises. Now, they could be progressed for sure, but many times you kind of get stuck here. Maybe you're doing the sideline hip abduction, right? Maybe you're doing the glute bridges. Maybe you're doing hip hikes or step ups or step downs, or maybe even doing monster walks. Now, those things can work for sure, but they oftentimes are targeting muscular endurance. You're oftentimes ignoring other types of strength attributes, such as maximal strength, speed strength, explosive strength, right? So when you just work on muscular endurance, now it can work to an extent, but again, you're missing the tendon loading for running, and running actually needs energy storing or elasticity, kind of that explosive jumping, that shock absorption properties of the tendon, right? So you need multiple types of strength attributes to fully, get back to running. But again, so many people get stuck at this phase and they think, oh, I did rehab. Why am I not getting better? It's often because the physical therapist kind of just stopped you here and didn't give you additional exercise to progress from that. Not all of them. Obviously, there's some good ones, of course, who know how to work with runners, but there's many who are more generic PTs whose skill set is more for the everyday person, or folks who just want to get back to walking, and many folks who are just at retirement age. Maybe they're just in a nursing home or retirement homes, et cetera. And again, they just care about walking or everyday life activities. And if you want to copy this Google Doc to learn more about running pain-free after tendon repair surgery, I'm sharing it in my free run group. Click the link in the description to join. It's online, so completely free. So how I bridge the rehab gap to running, so the pain to rehab. When I work with runners, I do a full mechanical assessment to find the weak links, whether it's the hip itself, the muscle, whether it's hip abduction, hip extension, the core, ankles chain, because so many people, again, just focus on the hip, but ignore the rest of the body, right? To be able to run, you need all the parts of the body to be working in unison, right? If you have a weak core, that's going to put more stress on your hip, or if you have really tight ankles, that might put stress on your hip as well. So we look at, one, we address all the weak links that are stopping you from being able to generate force and power as appropriately. Then also progress your exercise beyond just the basic rehab exercises, table or floor exercises, progressive loading, right? From like your mat exercise or table exercise to single leg work, compound lifts, explosive training, where we train the whole kinetic chain, not just the surgical height, not just where you had the surgery, right? So I'm a big fan of training also the posterior chain, glutes, hamstrings, and calves, right? Again, not just focusing on the glutes alone, using a pain traffic light guide to like really gauge when is it safe to get back to running. You usually, make sure, hey, you're able to walk comfortably with no symptoms for the past week or two. Then using traffic guide 0 to 3 is a green light. right? Minimal pain, minimal symptoms. Now, if you're getting flared up with just walking, then you have to like scale it back and maybe spend a few more weeks. Typically, it takes about 3 to 4 months after surgery to get back to running. But again, many people try to do traditional physical therapy. They're in there for 6 months. They still can't get back to running. Some people are in there for a year. They still can't back to running. And oftentimes because they haven't gone through these proper progressions with the exercises to fully strengthen them and get them back to running. But once you are able to back to running, and by the way, P.S., if you're working with me, I typically get my runners back to running within 3 months, 3 to 4 months. And usually by that third month or so, we're going to a run walk method. Again, respecting the pain traffic light guide, stages of healing. We start with like maybe run 1 minute, walk for 2 minutes. Do that for 15 or 20 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week. We also do cross training to maintain their general fitness, cardiovascular, aerobic, walking. If walking's easy, incline walking. If that's easy, weighted walking on an incline. Again, while respecting that pain traffic light guide. And so some of the sample exercises I like to use, right? Start with bridges, of course, but once we're beyond the bridges, we'll go to single leg bridge, elevated single leg bridge, hip thrusters with weight, squats with weight, single leg squats. You got your two-legged deadlift here. You got the single leg deadlift also with a weight. You can do kettlebell, dumbbell, barbells. You can use a weighted vessel. There's so many different ways to progress the exercises. Then we also have to go to power, explosive lifting. So one, you could do speed squats where you actually do squats quickly. You could also do jumping exercise. Jumping is also very important to allow the tendon to absorb shock and get it back to running. So big fan of doing squats, jumps, but there's also box jumps, drop jumps, all sorts of jumping type exercises to also better prepare your body to handle running. Also training in different planes of movement like lateral lunges, rotational lunges, and then again, using the traffic light. So even if you could get flared up with exercise, so give yourself a day in between like heavy lifting or a day in between a run walk workout to see how your body responds. Because if you flare up, let's say your pain goes up to like a 7 out of 10, you have to stop the activity. Obviously, hopefully you should be working with like a physical therapist or some other movement professional to help you engage your progression through the exercises. If you don't have one, go get one. And obviously if we have to scale back, then you modify, you regress. Maybe go back from a single leg back to a two-legged exercise, like a two-legged squat or two-legged bridge. But if you're able to progress properly, right, you're healing, the body's strong, you continue to add more weights, more repetitions, go from two-legged to single leg, and again, follow the traffic light guide for monitoring your pain. And when it comes to like heavy lifting, that's usually at least once or twice a week. So you could do a heavy lower body day, where again, we're doing the squats and deadlifts, and then you're doing the accessory lifts, doing things like isolating the hip abduction or the hip extensors, doing band walkouts, cable walkouts. And then you also want to train your core, train your upper body. You could do them as a full body day, right? A full body lifting day, or you could do a upper body, lower body split. There's so many different ways to program the strength training, but at least 2 or 3 times a week, you're doing strength training. And then when you're doing the cross training as well, 2 times a week. And then when it's ready for when your body's ready to handle, like it's able to handle jumping, there's minimal pain, right? Your tendon doesn't hurt when you're walking either. And you can handle a run walk method. Then you can continue to make the run walk longer. For example, go from 1 minute run to like 2 minute run, then 3 minute run, and so forth. Eventually you're doing 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of continuous running. And your body should be ready enough to then go into the base building phase like of a traditional marathon build. If you're supposed to be a marathon runner, or if you want to do a half marathon, or whatever thing you want to train for, you can start resuming a traditional running program. A caveat, that being said, someone who's injury prone, I still recommend a 3 runs per week schedule. So I do also have 3 run per week running plans, whether you want to train for a marathon, half marathon, etc. Again, you can also get that in my free online run group as well. But when you're getting back to training, you still want to have enough proper recovery days and monitor the traffic light guide for pain. So what happened after proper progression? A lot of the runners I work with after surgery, glute tendon, right, they are able to reduce flare-ups, improve their pain tolerance with loading them. Well, loading is just adding weight, adding speed, right, adding mileage, right? They're able to gradually return to the consistent run-walk program without setbacks. Their hip is stronger, their tendon stronger. Other thing I didn't mention was also mobility. You also want to make sure you have full range of motion from side to side, so you have adequate mobility in the hip, and that your body is now strong and mobile to handle the impact loading of running, right? We transition from just the basic rehab phases to power and full running, and many runners are able to run within 3 months. Now, if you have some other medical conditions, maybe you have diabetes, obesity, or some other things that may slow you down, it may take 6 months, but it really shouldn't take more than 6 months for most folks to get back to running. If it is, get a second opinion, work with a different physical therapist, right? Because it really shouldn't take more than 6 months to get you back to fully running. Oftentimes, there's something else going on. Either A, you're not consistent with the rehab exercises. If the consistency is the key, make sure you're consistent. Oftentimes, people just drop off, or they partially do the like, oh, I just do the strength exercise once or twice a week. No, you should be doing it closer to 3 times a week. Or sometimes if the tissue is very weak, you might have to do it like 4 times a week, right? So obviously ask yourself if it's a consistency problem, but if it's more of that, you just don't know the right exercise and the PT is not really able to help you past the beginner phases, work with a different physical therapist who can help you. And I'm a physical therapist myself who also works with runners. I'm a run coach and a PT. And I currently have 2 spots open to work with me privately for one-to-one help to get you running pain-free. And if you're curious, there's a link to apply in the description. First come, first serve. So key lessons for returning to run after glute tendon surgery. Strengthen the tendon beyond just the basic rehab to handle the running loads, right? The impact loading of running. Address the entire kinetic chain, right? Not just the glute, right? Look at the full body. Progress gradually using that pain-guided loading and run-walk method, right? That traffic light guide. Respect the healing phases, right? If you get constant pain, it's 24/7, it feels hot and inflamed, you may have to deload for a week, a deload phase to allow it to recover, allow it to get past that inflammatory phase, and then you go back into the repair and remodeling phase. Right. You don't want to be too aggressive with your loading, right? Or too aggressive with the strengthening or the power, etc. And with the right plan and consistency, a safe return to pain-free running is achievable.